Hello and welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and it's been about 2 years since I've upgraded my cleanup crew. Now, over time, your cleanup crew will diminish. So over time, you're going to have to repopulate that cleanup crew. Now, I've also brought my Frag Tank online recently, and I've got basically no cleanup crew for that. So I went to LiveAquaria, hit their Build Your Own Reef Cleaner section, bought a bunch of stuff for the Frag Tank, the display upstairs, and the wife's Nano tank. So come check out what I got. As you can see, my Frag Tanks are in a pretty poor state. So I went ahead and ordered a bunch of stuff to help deal with this. But the first thing I gotta do before I put anything in this tank is clean it out. I put the entire cleanup crew in the refugium. This way I could work on cleaning the frag tank while everything acclimated. I hooked up the Ritter Tube, which I use as a vacuum, so I could clean the frag tank. You'll notice the lights are on here, and that's just so you can see the filming. As soon as I was done filming, I went ahead and shut the lights off for acclimation purposes. Now it's time to fire up the Ritter Tube, which I use as a vacuum, to start cleaning out the frag tank. Now, I love this thing. I can just continue to vacuum over and over and over in my tank without really using any water up. I lose a small amount, but not much at all, really. So I can just sit here and clean for half an hour, whatever I need, and I don't have to use water. If I was to do this with just a normal siphon, it wouldn't suck nearly as well as this vacuum's doing, and I would use an immense amount of water. Finally, after 30 minutes of vacuuming, I'm done. And the tank looks much better. I still got lots of stuff stuck to the bottom that I just can't vacuum off, and that's where the cleanup crew is going to come in handy. But I've got 90% of it out of here, so hopefully the cleanup crew has a chance to really knock this back. I think there's still more I'm going to have to do. I don't think the cleanup crew is going to get it all, but they're definitely going to help. Now that the members of the cleanup crew are done acclimating, it's time to put them in the tank. So first thing I do is I rinse them in a bowl of tank water. This prevents them from bringing any nasties into the tank. It's not 100% certain, but it's definitely going to help. So we're looking at first our 4 pincushion urchins and 2 short spine urchins. These guys are going to help eat the algae in the tank. Next up is the peppermint shrimp. Now, these guys are known to eat Aptasia, but mainly we bought this guy just to put in the nano tank just to look good. He will actually eat the stuff that falls in the tank, uneaten food. He's going to kind of pick around the rockwork and be helpful for the cleanup crew. On to the Bumblebee snails. These guys will eat algae off the rockwork and algae out of the sand and kind of scavenge around. They're a nice part of your cleanup crew, but for our purposes, they're pretty, so they're going in the nano tank. On to the porcelain crabs. These guys live in anemones. I had a white one of these named Hermy crab that lived in my rose bubble tip anemone. I had him for a little over 2 years. When my clowns decided to move into the rose bubble tip anemone, Hermy crab mysteriously disappeared. Well, now the clowns aren't interested in the rose bubble tip anymore. They like to live in my clam. So I've purchased 2 porcelain crabs to live in my rose bubble tip. These guys are really cool because they use maxillipeds to filter the water, and that's how they eat their food. And then there's the stuff you probably shouldn't have bought. This is a Babylon Snail. We bought this for the 5-gallon Nano, but he came in at around 2.5 inches. He's a big snail. They're like a really fancy Nassarius snail in that they live in the sand and they eat uneaten foods. The problem with these guys is they eat tridactyna clams, or at least they've been known to. So he can't go in the main display. So hopefully this little guy does good in the 5-gallon Nano. On to the real Nassarius snails. These guys come in small, so I can put 5 in the nano tank. The other 5 are going in the main display. And these guys are cool because they're going to consume the detritus, and food waste that falls in and on the sand bed. I also bought 6 12-packs of the tiny blue-legged hermit crabs. I love these guys because they eat just about anything. Detritus, algae, but the one thing I have seen these guys eat that nothing else eats is cyanobacteria. So I bought a bunch, but after seeing how small they were, I decided not to put them in the frag tank. I put them in the main display. If I would have left these guys in the frag tanks, they would have been sucked out every time I tried to vacuum the frag tanks out. So I put them all over the Montiporas, as I've found these guys are great at eating whatever that brown algae is that's bugging the crap out of my Montiporas. So I've got 72 crabs cruising around, eating all that stuff. Now, I still need crabs for the frag tanks. Now, there are still some good-sized hermits in my display tank. So as I see these guys, I'm going to pull them out and throw them in the frag tank. Lastly are the Serpent Stars. Now, these guys got a much slower acclimation than anything else. They are very sensitive to changes in pH and salinity. So they spent the first hour just hanging out in the bag with everything else in the refugium. Then I slowly added water to each bag. Actually, I put the starfish in their own bowl and then just slowly added water over the course of about 3 hours. I took my time and I didn't have a good way to drip, so I didn't drip. But these guys look spectacular. They are in great health. The coloration on these are really cool. The big one in particular is this brown color with the black banding, and he actually has a perfect star in the middle of his body. He is really cool looking. Now, the small one doesn't have the perfect star, but he's still brown with the black banding. But I got so lucky with these guys. We bought 2 in hopes that we would get a big one and a small one. The big one's going in the main display, and the small one's going in the nano tank. And we got really lucky because sometimes these guys come in really big. Serpent Stars are definitely my favorite member of the cleanup crew. They live under rocks, and when it's feeding time, they come out and they eat whatever's fallen to the sand bed. Then they'll kind of cruise around looking for more food, and then they're going to go back and hide under the rocks. But these are one of the few stars that you're actually going to see and react to feeding, so they're cool. Then their movement is really cool in the way they move. So I really like these guys. So in the comments column, I would love to know your favorite cleanup crew member and why. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, because there's always more videos coming. Thanks for watching this episode of Mile High Reefers.